Welcome to Diary of a Dreamer, where resilience unlocks your potential. I'm Tasha Eisinger, and each week I'll bring you powerful stories and practical insights from my own experiences and inspiring guests. Whether you're facing challenges or chasing dreams, this podcast is your go-to for motivation, building confidence, and practical tips for transforming obstacles into opportunities. Be sure to check out my website, tashaeisinger.com. Let's dive into today's episode and start turning your dreams into reality. Louise, how are you today?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited that I stumbled upon you. Was it on Facebook?
Yes, we connected on Facebook.
Yes, and I've been following you on Instagram, and I love your content. You're so engaging and interesting, and I've been learning a lot for my small business. So I thought, why not have you on Diary of a Dreamer to help anybody in small business, just so everybody knows who I'm visiting with today. Louise is from Talent Underlined. She is a powerhouse in HR and people strategy for UK tech companies, specializing in transforming chaotic or non-existent HR systems into well-oiled, legally compliant structures. So very important what you do, Louise. So I'm excited to have you here. I know you typically deal with six-figure tech companies, but for the listeners, it's okay if you don't have a six-figure business, because Louise has created a startup and gotten it all the way to six figures. So she knows how to do it from start to finish. So I'm excited to have you here, Louise, and sharing all your wisdom with us.
Wonderful. Thank you. It has been a ride, especially as you said. There's often a lot of disconnect between people who have these big businesses and are out there, and then somebody who's just starting something up. And I think we sometimes forget everything starts somewhere, and we have to give ourselves credit that we can get there too.
Absolutely. And I believe if you have a strong foundation, as your business multiplies, it won't crumble.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. For that, we always talk about scaling and about how it's super important in the beginning when you're thinking about your process and your systems. Don't limit yourself even at those bits. When you're starting out a business, it's so important to think, okay, this system might work for now, but how is this going to adapt as I grow? Because you also don't want to get in your own way and create systems that are not going to grow with you.
Absolutely. And you can see it sometimes as an outsider or a consumer in businesses where there's these glitches and things that aren't working very well. And it's like, oh, they probably didn't foresee this type of growth this quickly. So I think it is important what you're doing. And I'm so glad that you had a startup, because it is so different starting from the scratch and building everything out of nothing. So I do think, unfortunately, HR gets a bad rap. And when I hear people say, oh, HR, okay, you can't all be bad people and things like that. So can you describe what is the purpose of HR so that we can see the benefits of what you do?
Yes. So traditionally, HR was always seen as the gatekeeper to those big, scary exec board meetings. And if you were HR, your role traditionally in those companies was to protect the company. It was, okay, if you're in a meeting with HR, everybody was terrified because it was something bad. It was the people who were just there who were going to either fire you or do the dirty work of the execs who didn't really want to do it, or just had to come in and make all these big, scary changes. Now, what HR actually does is supposed to toe the line between both being a representative of the people and of the company. And I really want companies as well, they are now starting to see that change and that shift, that it's actually beneficial to do things for the people, because it means you're then going to get individuals who will stay with the company. You'll get more loyalty. You'll get happier employees who will then get happier customers, which then means more sales. So I think companies are now actually starting to see the benefit of HR being not just this back office function to fire people, but really at the beginning and at the forefront to create strategies that will help businesses thrive later on. So it doesn't just mean the person who signs off on the holiday, but really moving HR to the forefront of your strategy, thinking, how can we create great companies? Now, I really love being part of this change and this shift that we now find ourselves in, because it's all about now creating psychological safety in the workplace. And a lot of the time, people climb to the top and they end up in management roles because they are great at their job, but they may not have had those people skills to necessarily manage a team. And that's where kind of new HR, which is why you may have seen it's now starting to be labeled as talent acquisition, talent managers, and human resources is now starting to see is how can we make the most of the people in our business, which benefits them, but also benefits the company. And we also now fall into this area of compliance, where not only HR is great for all of the basic housekeeping like contracts and getting people signed on and working out their holiday and that admin, but we also now need to consider, as people get more rights in the workplace, as we get things like maternity, paternity, understanding of what people need, and understanding of our organization as a whole in terms of demographics. Do we have enough women in the workplace? Do we have enough men in the workplace? What are our skills like? When we start to really consider our people as a resource, that's what human resources means. It's the resource in your business, and it's one of the heaviest, most expensive resources. If you do something incorrectly in terms of compliance law, you don't give the right paternity, or you hire somebody incorrectly, that can have massive costs for the business. And so now it's more important than ever that before, oh, HR, it's not really important, it's a back office function. But if you do something incorrectly, like you don't check someone's passport and you hire them, in certain areas and certain zones and certain countries, you could get huge fines or your business could be closed. So I really want to give HR the attention it deserves, not just from the business side because of the compliance piece and how important it is, but from that human angle of how can we reconnect and see the people in our workplaces as teams, colleagues, something that's going to benefit our business if we can all work together. And I'm so passionate about it, and I am really exciting that we're finally starting to see that move of, you know, HR as a support system and not just scary HR.
I
We're
love
people,
that.
we have names, and people often forget, we're people too. So when we don't like our bosses, where do we go? I don't have anyone to complain to, It's like, where does HR go when HR needs to complain?
You go to
need
each other in the department, right?
Exactly. And in some businesses, you might just be the only person. And so you're kind of having to have this really, I like to see HR and myself as this really kind of fluid chameleon who has to move through all of these pieces of a business. I have to be able to go to the exec and say, well, yes, maybe the employee isn't performing, but also maybe you didn't manage them very well. And then you have to go to the employee and say, oh, I'm sorry, the boss is really terrible, but also maybe you shouldn't be late all the time, and you have to kind of try and balance all these individuals in a really diplomatic, tactful way to build those relationships. So I like to see HR as the bridge builder. You're putting in those foundations into the business. And I love that.
I love you explaining to how it got the bad rap and
Yeah.
why, and the transition. And so it sounds like it's a people development is what you are.
100%.
And you have to develop yourself and have really good communication skills and people skills to connect and make it a win-win. Is that 100%. What I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So when does a business need to have an HR department? When does that, or a person for HR?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think people need to always have an awareness of HR responsibilities from the very beginning, even if you're not necessarily going to have the HR person. So what I would consider to businesses, you normally need HR when you get to the point where you've started building a team, but it's getting too much for you to manage all of those various requests. Maybe now you as the business owner, you were managing those people, you were going, oh, it's fine, I can tell this person what to do, and we all working together and it's fine. But then maybe you'll get to enough people where you go, oh, I don't really have time to look into this person wants to go on maternity leave, or I don't really know how to handle this, and I'm not sure what to do. And then all of that seems to be now like a pressure on top of you. So what you could do in those instances, it's a very difficult area where a lot of people don't realize that you can get support from outside consultants. I would not recommend to a tiny business to hire an HR person straight away. You just don't need it straight away. What you do need is to get some decent advice, decent research, maybe get an external consultant, someone like myself, or research online where you can build those foundations initially yourself. Just have an awareness. What contracts am I giving people? Because that depends what area I'm in. What job descriptions am I giving people to make sure that those very first 4 people who join your team, do they also know what you want them to do? Do you both have the same understanding? If I say to you, come join my podcast, and I'm expecting you to edit, but then you think your job is to book guests, those are 2 very different responsibilities and needs to be discussed. So what you would need to do is have that in writing as a reference document. So it's just having that awareness of what is the journey of someone who comes into my business. I'm a sole person. When somebody else comes in to work with me, what does that look like? What is their journey from their very first day to their last day and all those steps in between? What am I expecting from this person? Write it down. And it sounds so basic, but so many of us, when we start a business, we're excited and we forget just to write down, this is my assistant. Okay, what do I want my assistant to do? What can my assistant do? What should they do? How much should I pay them? What happens if they work overtime? All those little questions. Get it on paper in the beginning. And then as you grow, you then have a reference document to work from and decide, okay, well, what does this look like? Should we change this? Should we add those responsibilities? Do we need to make things a bit different? Somebody else will come into the business. Where does that person fit between me and the existing person? And so getting it all on paper, I would say would be your first point. Then you can get an external consultant by hour. Then you can get an external consultant, just do a bit of payroll by month. And then you can get somebody full-time in your business. So see it as like a step-by-step where you first just need a bit of hand holding. Then you need someone to actually start taking over. But just keep it in mind the whole way through, especially when it comes to your legal obligations.
So I think it makes a lot of sense to have clarity.
Yes.
Because if you don't know what you want, the people in your business cannot produce it because you haven't explained it well. So you need to take time to have clarity, right? Of this is what I want. These are my expectations. And then as you continue to grow, would it be something like having HR come in like, hey, I need to build my team out. Where does it make sense? Would that be a question?
Exactly. And so that's why then you could use an external consultant who you just pay hourly or for a specific project, and they could support you and work with you to figure out what roles do you actually need. Because in the very beginning of a business, everybody needs a bit more hands-on. You need someone who's just willing to kind of do whatever to get the job done. And then as your business grows, you can kind of define those roles. And especially if you've worked in one particular area, you might not have the technical knowledge yourself. You might not know what that role is called or really what you need. So getting an extra support person or strategy to kind of help you figure that out. I know it seems like an extra step when you, oh, but I'm a small business and I don't have the money. But even just paying like a little bit of investment into this hourly really then will save you money in the long run, because a bad hire, because you're in a rush or you're stressed, will really make a mess. And when it makes a mess, then that's time you're not going to get back. It could be a bad impression on your company. It could be affect your reputation. So you have to lay the groundwork. And I've been there. I know what it's like. It's all hands on deck, and there's no time and you're stressed. But just take that time, even if it's that half an hour in the morning, to do a bit of research or lay the foundations in your business, because that's what will help you survive later on. 100%.
Yeah, I love you hitting on the investment part of it, because it is hard when you don't have the time, you don't have the money, and you're struggling and spinning your wheels. I don't know if in the UK if you have this, but we have cancel culture in the United States where you make a mistake and you are completely canceled for who knows how long. And these companies are not going to have PR teams to help get them out of the mess, right? So it really is an investment.
It is an investment. And just doing that little bit of research, especially then having that framework or a reference point to start from, it also helps you start to think about things. And then when you bring people on board, you'll be able to explain things to them. Even if you have a look at some templates online or some documents, you can then start to ask yourself some of these questions that will help onboard somebody else into your business so they can represent you in the way you want to be represented. And it stops having these awkward moments where maybe you then have somebody who's working with you and you don't really like their work, or you're not sure how to address it, and you want to have a good working relationship with them. If you have everything as a document, that becomes your tool. Document everything in the early stages, because that becomes your base. If then somebody's not performing, that gives you the first bit to go, okay, we said you were going to do this. Remember how we wrote it down? Do you think that's what's happened? And they go, oh, actually, no, I haven't done that. And you're like, oh, okay, well, let's do that then. And it stops it becoming a conflict between me and you, but it's more me and you versus the document. And the
Yes,
document
well,
can be the bad guy.
exactly. The documentation takes out the emotion because either you've
Exactly.
tracked it or you haven't, you have proof.
Mm-hmm.
And we all have poor memories, even people who have good
Yes.
memories, because we have
Mm-hmm.
emotion and so many other things that we're dealing with in life. So I like that documentation aspect, which leads me into like, how can a small business make sure that they are legally compliant? I know that in the United States, people are big into, suing and attorneys and all of that, and it can get very expensive. So how can small businesses do this?
This is very difficult, and this all depends on the zone that you're in and the legal requirements. So you just have to show that you've done your due diligence. Okay, so that just means sitting down and researching. Okay, where is my business set up? And what laws are going to apply to my business? Doesn't matter where you're operating, selling, anything like that. But you have to make sure that you have checked what are the local laws that will apply to your business. And then, okay, where is this person based? If they are somebody who is then outside of that, check the region that they're in and see how those two regions connect. You will need to check what the local laws are. You will need to check what documentation is required. And in that case, especially maybe after you've had a go at it yourself, just run that documentation by a professional, because then if you've done that, then that can at least show that you've taken due diligence. Should somebody then come and sue you or try and do something else, if you've got a paper trail of this is what I did, it will put you in much better position to protect yourself. Now, in the UK, we have databases and laws and things are much more clearly laid out because the HR law is much more detailed than you have in the US. But it's just to know the rights, both from your side as a business, but from that side as an employee. And like I said, even if you can spare just getting a quick check once you have your documentation, it will be so worth it in the long run to protect yourself.
So here's a random question. So you have your business in whichever country, right? And you obviously have to do the local laws and all of that. But what about when it's international? You probably have to also abide by international laws as well, right?
Yes. So the good thing to do is to, if you're looking at both laws, always apply the strictest one. So if in one country it says, you have this is allowed, this isn't allowed, then always go for the one that says it's not allowed. And always just apply the most strictest one. For most part, people can work in whatever jurisdiction is going to cover them should they get sued or anything like that. But as you mentioned, the best thing to do is just to apply the strictest test so that you can protect yourself the best.
That makes so much sense. Great, simple answer. That would have been the common sense guess, but I've learned common sense is not always so common. So
when you're in business, it is so difficult because there's so much to think about and there's so much to remember, which is why it's another great thing just to get something down on paper, because then even you yourself can find the gap. But then if you write a job description, you can go, oh, hang on a minute. In this template, it says I have to write their full name and their date of birth. And then you think, oh, well, I just hired my friend for the last hire. I didn't ask their date of birth or their surname. But then what happens if I'm working in gaming industry online? Maybe there are age restrictions that apply to that. So just having all that documentation and even going off a template, then like you said, we forget those simple things because we're so in it and we're in the weeds and we can't see the bigger picture. But if you just use at least a template or documentation, it will be your friend.
So I'm guessing that one of the most common mistakes that small businesses make is lack of documentation and lack of clarity. What are some other common small business mistakes in regard to HR?
That's a really good question. I think that people, when it comes to HR, they are so focused on their business that they forget about maybe some of those communication pieces or how they might be coming across. It's really easy to be like, that's not right, this is bad, this is this, and just dictate, that you actually forget that there's a human on the other end of that who can't see what's inside your head. And you have to be able to explain something. Now, a really good way to explain something to somebody is make sure, okay, is it that this person has had enough training or is it a capability issue? Now, when you've covered both of those things, you should always assume that you're the one at fault. If you're the business owner, it's your fault. If you immediately start from a position where you're not defensive And you can immediately go, okay, I didn't give this person enough training. I didn't explain it right. I didn't give them enough materials. This is my issue. If you cover all of that first, and you are 100% sure that from an objective point of view, you have provided the right resources, the right examples, you've documented all those things, then you can go to capability. And then it will probably become obvious whether the issue is you or them. But sometimes there isn't anyone's fault, it's just a miscommunication. So you have to immediately assume it's your fault. If you back down with your defenses, the other person will back down as well. I would say that from an HR point of view. If I just assume, oh my goodness, perhaps I didn't say this clearly enough, I didn't write it down right, I didn't give you enough time, I wasn't clear, the other person usually will then go, oh, this is a safe space. I can tell them what actually happened. And they go, no, actually, I did see your email this morning, but, and then you can have an actual transparent conversation. If you want to apply something similar to clients, I would always say that when you're talking to your clients, make sure you get in front of issues and you have to be transparent. So if you know that your team member has done something wrong, don't lie and try and cover it up and make it it's messy. Get in front of it. Go and tell the client, hey, I know we said Thursday. Actually, we're going to need a little bit more lead time on this. Shall we meet on Monday? The client will probably go, oh, okay, fine. But if the client discovers they've come to the meeting, you're not prepared, it's a rush job because the other person didn't do it when they said they would, messy. Just make sure that you control your business before it controls you and get in front of things.
It was really hard not to applaud you when you said for the business owner to take full responsibility. That's just good life advice in any relationship. Ask yourself first, what is my role, and own it. Usually people are pretty understanding when you actually own up your part, right?
Of course, 100%. And you'll be so surprised how much beauty can come out of that and how much connection can come out of that if we just, push our egos to the side.
Yes. Yeah, one of the biggest things that we say on my Little Shot team for my books is it's about our project, not our egos. So the ego has to be left at the door, and it's what is best for this project. So anything that I work on, I make that a point with everybody. Hey, it's about producing results and working collaboratively, which is what I'm hearing you say.
Yes, 100%. And we often say to our leaders in the team, it's not about you, it's about the best idea in the room. So when you look to be a leader or to be a good business owner, you have got these people on your team because you want them to be better than you. You want them to have ideas and collaborate and bring something to the table. They might be able to see a blind spot that you can't. And that's why it's brilliant when you're doing your hiring. I would also, just to deviate here, go on a tangent. When you're doing your hiring, look for somebody who's not the same as you, but intentionally somebody who has a different skill set. Because if you are great with the team, but you're horrible with clients, then actually you need someone who doesn't really matter what their team skills are, but they have to be great with the clients because they have to fill that gap that you are to make your team really strong. So I get a little bit antsy whenever I see people saying things like, oh, you need to be a culture fit and you have to fit with us. And I say, but that diversity of choosing somebody different from you who has different perspectives and different ideas, you all need to be able to collaborate nicely. But to be able to fill each other's blind spots will just have such a great effect on the diversity of your team and those ideas and problem solving skills that you'll have.
Completely agree. Like we were meant to meet. I'm like nodding over here. Yes, completely agree. And when it comes to culture, though, I think the culture, and we talk about this on, my teams, is the culture is the character values. Right? How you treat people, how you communicate, emotional intelligence, all of those things. But you're 100% right. I don't care how good you are, you cannot do everything yourself. And so by filling in the gaps with the people, you become a complete team, a complete project, whatever it may be, a complete business.
And that can be so difficult for business owners to want to delegate because it's such a natural thing to say, I want to do everything myself and I want to control it all. But as you said, you mentioned that key word there is results, and think about, okay, what do you want the results to be? And try to get out of that micromanaged space and instead get into that results focused, solutions focused space of, okay, what is the impact of this? What do I actually need? And I sometimes myself have to remember, especially in the early phases of my business, I was very much thinking, oh, well, I'm working all the time and I just need to work, work, work. And I was just burning myself out, working at everything, anything, just because I was so needing to get to the goal, that I actually didn't focus, okay, let me put this in a priority order of what's going to make the most impact, what's actually connected closest to the sale. Because it's beautiful that I'm here writing up all this extra stuff and changing all the fonts, but maybe it's not quite as high priority as I think it is. And maybe I need to look at the bigger picture and not get so stuck in the little weeds of everything and just go, okay, the bigger picture is I need to get from A to B, which route is going to get me there fastest, and then I can go back and do the other little bits when we get the time, and just try and focus on impact and results. I love that.
Yes, so important. See the bigger picture. What do you actually want here?
Yeah.
And one of the things you said about micromanaging, I hate micromanaging. So I tend to just, here's what I want you to do. Here's everything. Ask me questions and want them to do it, which doesn't always work either. So what's the balance between micromanaging and quality leadership?
That's a great point. I think we need to know what the end result of something is in order to not feel we have to micromanage. So if we are giving somebody a task or we're delegating, number one, if we say we need it to be good, we need to actually show them, what does good mean? What does good look like? Give them some examples of that so they can get there on their own. Also making sure that people have the tools. So you can say to them, rather than the font needs to be size 11 Arial, tell them the font needs to be on brand, the guides are in the drive. And then they can then go and find out what the branding is. Again, that brings you back to your early documentation, that you should have everything documented. You shouldn't be the only person in your company who knows what your branding is. That should be written down so that when somebody else comes to do it, there's a reference guide of standardization. Again, if you have things standardized, anybody can pick it up. And that's a really important thing when we talk about standardization in a business, is to make sure that we as managers are managing the processes and not the people. The people have to show up and the people have to do the work, or they just don't get employed, or they don't get rehired, or the contract ends. But we need to manage processes. And so rather than, like we said, getting into all those details of saying, well, this color needs to be changed, tell them, how does this project fit in the bigger picture? Oh, you're making labels? Okay, where are the labels going to go? Don't just tell them you need to make this label. Tell them, okay, we need product packaging for the candle, which is going to go out next week for those clients. Needs to be on brand. What else? Involve them in the task. What should we put on the labels? Maybe we should put the ingredients on, legal compliance. Get everybody involved in the creation of the task, and that will help them feel engaged in the completion of it. And that way we can kind of balance that sort of quality control. And I always like to ask open-ended questions with my team members. Well, how do you think it went? This is the brief, what we said we were going to do. What do you think? Do you think we did all these things? And they'll be like, oh, maybe actually looking at it again, maybe we could do this bit, and kind of encourage people to do their own self-reflection, so they're not nervously coming to some big scary boss for the scary boss's opinion. Make it like a reflective thing, so we're all getting better all the time.
So be a good teacher.
Yeah, be a mentor these people. You should give everybody in your team enough wings and strength to leave you. And the chances are, if you're developing people like that and you are giving them skills and knowledge and you're not gatekeeping, then they will want to stay. They'll want to be in that kind of environment. A word of warning and caution, of course, goes back to compliance. Get your house in order. When you hire somebody, make sure you have an NDA in place. Make sure you have a non-compete. What are those? If you don't know, immediately go and find out. As business owners, you need to know. Make sure that you have documents essentially that protect your intellectual property. You should be able to share whatever you need in your company of a way of people learning skills, but also making sure that if you have any company secrets or company documents, you don't want them giving those things to other businesses, which is why it's really important in the beginning. 3 main things you need to have: a contract that writes down who this person is, why you're hiring them, how much you're going to pay them, all those terms. You need to have an NDA, so it's a non-disclosure agreement. Usually we associate it with like all celebrities have NDAs because they have all this secret stuff to protect their brand. But also you as a small business, your NDAs could be things could fall under your NDA, like your all of your passwords and your access to things. You need to make sure they're not sharing that with anybody. You know, that's your private information. On top of that, you need to make sure they might have a non-compete in your industry. You might be developing technologies. You might be developing you know, a great storyline or a plot for something, a book, and you don't want someone working in the same sector for however amount of time in case they are giving away your plan and strategy to the competitor. So make sure in the very beginning, when you take on somebody, you need to know who that person is, get their passport, their ID, their documentation. You need to make sure you have the NDA, and you need to make sure that you have the non-compete if it applies. If it doesn't apply, have one that says it doesn't apply. Just cover yourself and make sure you have things in order when you first take someone on. You are taking that person on to the most important part of your life. If you're building a business and you're inviting them into that little home that you have, you need to make sure that they're going to protect it and that you put down foundations to protect yourself.
So here again, documentation. If anybody
documentation, yeah.
Make sure everybody's getting this. Yes, documentation. So I'm kind of seeing then how maybe AI could help.
Yes,
with
100%.
HR, right?
Yes, HR, especially now with the technology, a lot of people are scared about AI. They don't need to be. It can be your friend, especially if you want to go and make yourself a base terms. You could say, please write me an onboarding email for my new employee. Write me a 3-day plan into ChatGPT of what their first few days could look like. Now, please don't just use AI stuff. AI is like a great tool. It's like a new Google. So it needs to be tailored for you. You also need to go and get an external checker or researcher and make sure that it's the right location, jurisdiction, whatever. But it's a great place to start. If you have no idea what you need to do, then you can use some of these AI technologies to write training plans for you. You can ask it to critique you. I use it all the time to critique me. I say, here is a letter I wrote to, I mean, I don't use it now for an employee, but like in the beginning, I would be like, oh, here's a letter I wrote to my co-founder. Could you make it better? Could you check that the language is not defensive? Could you make sure that it shows and it breathes the values of my company? We have these lovely company values and say, oh, we create psychologically safe workspaces. And then the email goes, this is terrible, do it again. So you need to make sure if you're having a value in your business, are you actually breathing that into everything that you do? Is it running through like a tapestry that needs to run through the work that you're producing, the way that you speak to people, the language that you use across your brand? Because otherwise, as you said, the way you treat your employees, whether you have an internal, external facing business, it will get out. And then it will be your biggest PR disaster, you know? So especially with social media as it is, the employees and the teams are your first customers. They are your internal customers. And you have to remember that as much as they are on your side, make sure that whatever you do, however you speak, do it as though you were speaking and a client could see you. There is never a private chat that I write in that I wouldn't be happy if a client saw it. You know, you need to make sure of that, because an employee could be screenshotting how you're bad mouthing the client. Boom, business over in 1 second. So just be prepared, internal customers.
Here again, great life advice.
Right.
If you wouldn't want it publicly shared everywhere, then maybe we shouldn't say it or write it in the first place.
100%. Great advice. Yeah. Yes, especially if you imagine in HR, that's also a reputational thing that we have, that, oh, they're just there because so-and-so sent an inappropriate message to someone else or whatever. So you just always have to write with integrity all of the time. And it's also okay to not know all of the answers. It's 100% okay to say to your team member, oh, I really want to come back to you with a thoughtful response. I'm going to need a couple of hours to sit on this and come back to you. Okay. And then immediately that person's had a response. They know that they feel heard. And that gives you time to either go and get the correct advice, not get yourself in hot water by saying something rushed because you're unsure. You know, it's okay to take your time and just tell them, I want to come back to you the right way. So give me some time with this. And they'll appreciate that. It's a great way. It's a little placeholder, you know?
And everybody hates waiting. When they think something's wrong, they hate waiting. So just have the common decency,
Yes.
have effective communication here
Mm.
again.
Yes.
Effectively communicate, like, we will
Mm-hmm.
touch base. This is the time frame. It
Mm-hmm.
also shows emotional intelligence. These are just foundational things I feel like people should have anyways, right?
You'll be surprised by how many people just get lost in the crisis that feels like a startup, and they just forget everything.
Yeah, emotions kind of override logic a lot of
Yes.
times.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any favorite books or things that you recommend for people to read?
Ooh, great question. For me, when I was first starting out, something that I thought was brilliant was Stephen Covey.
Yes.
Stephen Covey does a life habits book, and that was my first route into, okay, how can I get in front of myself? How can I organize myself? And how can I control what's kind of around me in a better way? And I love that. So I'm all for self-help books, doing the work, doing the reflection, and looking after yourself so you can make those decisions. If there would be one takeaway that I would say to any business owner, I would say apply a solutions focused thinking to everything that you do and take the emotion out of it. If you can just treat yourself as if you are somebody that you are helping. So when you look at your own business, just step out of yourself for 5 minutes with that coffee and go, right, what is the strategy here? Because if you're going to leave the ship because you're the business owner, you need to know where you're going. And you can't take anyone on that journey with you unless you know. And it's surprising how many people, myself included, just get lost and stuck in the chaos and the stress and the emotions, and just breathe. You will be fine. Keep going. And if you apply that logic, you will be able to carry that resilience through and just persevere. Just keep going, and you'll get there.
I love that. So clarity, communication, and documentation. Those are the 3 words of the day, right?
I think so. Yes, I think so. You just document everything all of the time.
That's all you do. So
Literally,
I
that's
know
it.
that you are doing so many exciting things. What are you most
Mhm.
excited about right now in your business?
So I am currently working on a leadership course to help women get into those executive roles, or to find their feet if they are an executive or a business owner for the first time. Maybe they have a blind spot or they feel insecure about their role as a business owner or an executive. And so what I've done is I've taken all my knowledge working as a consultant over the last few years, and I'm putting it together in a leadership course so that women can feel, I can do this and I belong here. Because so often, especially when I was growing up, I didn't realize I put my own limit on myself of, well, maybe I can be the best secretary. Maybe I could be like the best manager, but there's always a male CEO in my own vision. There was always a male CEO, COO. There was always a male executive or boss at the top. And I really want women to start being able to really feel that they are welcome in these boardrooms and there's a space for us. Because for me personally, I've never felt like there's been a space to me. And it's always been like, okay, dream big, but not that big, And I really want to feel that not only can I prove them wrong, but also I want to feel confident myself in that. So I would say the exec leadership course, which I'm hoping to finish in the next couple of months, maybe for summer. I'm super excited about that.
I absolutely love that. I'm so excited to see what you create.
Thank
I know
you.
it'll be beautiful and wonderful
Hmm.
and
Thank
impactful.
you so much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
I can't wait. And there is a space for women at the top. We
Hmm.
bring things to the table that are very valuable, and men do
Hmm.
as well. And I think as we learn to believe in ourselves and grow ourselves, we can collaborate better as well and really produce results, right?
Hmm. 100%. Yes.
So how can people get in touch with you? Do you have any giveaways or any of those things as well?
So I have a website. You can reach me. It's www.talentunderlined.com. That's the full spelling out. And I'm also the same Talent Underlined on Instagram. So people can reach out to me. I'm going to be doing a 40% off discount for anybody. Just quote Tasha here, and I will give that discount on the website, any products, anything that we've discussed today, such as needing a template, needing a handbook, needing something for your business. And also, if there's something you need that you can't find, I'm willing to work with people and help them create that space in their business too. So come on over and ask me all your HR, people, and business mentorship questions.
Thank you so much, Louise. I'm so glad that we met on Facebook and got to visit today. That's the benefit of social media, right?
Right? Yeah, exactly. It's connecting everybody. So another word for today's office, connection.
That's right. All right. Well, take care, Louise. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Diary of a Dreamer. I hope you found the stories and tips shared today to be a source of motivation and strength. Remember, every challenge you face is a chance to grow and move closer to your dreams. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with anyone who could use a boost of encouragement. Please check out my website, tashaeisinger.com.